I didn't know my father was a coward until he said those words in front of 200 people. But I should have known. Looking back, all the signs were there. I just wasn't paying attention. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how one sentence at my wedding became the biggest mistake of my father's life. The courtroom is cold. Gray walls. That specific kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look guilty. I'm sitting at the plaintiff's table with my attorney, Margaret Chen. She's 53, sharp as broken glass, and she hasn't lost a defamation case in 9 years. I know this because I researched her for 6 months before I hired her. That's the thing about planning revenge, you don't rush it. My father sits across the room with his cheap lawyer, the one he found through a coworker at the insurance company where he's worked for 22 years. He looks smaller than I remember. Older. His hands are shaking as he fidgets with the edge of his suit jacket. The judge enters. Everyone stands. My heart isn't racing. I'm past that stage now. I'm calm. Perfectly, utterly calm. Margaret places a document on the table between us. It's a recording transcript. 17 pages. Single-spaced. The words my father said at my wedding, captured digitally, analyzed by an audio expert, and validated by a forensic linguist. This is where it begins. But let me go back, because you need to understand who I was before I learned what I was capable of. I grew up in a modest house on Riverside Drive in Portland. Nothing fancy. My father was a claims adjuster. He made decent money, nothing spectacular. My mother left when I was 7. She just packed a suitcase and drove to Seattle with someone she met at her yoga studio. My father never really talked about it. He just worked more hours and made me dinner every night. Boxed mac and cheese, mostly. Spaghetti on Fridays. He was present. That's what I used to say about him. He's a good father, I'd tell people. He's always been there. I graduated from Portland State with a degree in business administration. I was good with numbers, good with planning. I landed a job at a mid-sized accounting firm when I was 23. Within 5 years, I was managing 3 accounts and training new hires. I made $85,000 a year by the time I turned 28. I was saving for a down payment on a condo. That's where I met James. James Mitchell came into my life on a Tuesday afternoon in April. He walked into the firm's offices wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he needed someone to audit the financial records for his family's commercial real estate company. That someone was me. He was 32, confident without being arrogant. He had this way of listening, really listening, that made you feel like what you were saying actually mattered. His family had owned property in Portland for 3 generations. Not obscene wealth, but real money. The kind that came from knowing how to hold onto things. Our first meeting lasted 4 hours. We went through spreadsheets and tax documents, and somewhere around hour 3, we stopped talking about business. He asked me why I'd never married. I asked him the same thing. I was waiting for someone who could read a balance sheet, he said. I laughed. I didn't think he was serious. He was serious. We dated for 14 months before he proposed. It was a Sunday morning in May. We were at the farmer's market, and he stopped at a flower stall and bought a dozen white roses. Then he got down on one knee right there in front of the salmon stand and the guy selling organic bread. He didn't have a ring on him. He said he wanted me to pick it out. He said it felt wrong to choose something so important without me. I said yes, before he even finished the sentence. My father cried at the engagement dinner, real tears. He hugged me for almost a minute and whispered, "I'm so happy for you, baby." He looked James in the eye and said, "You take care of my daughter, you understand me. That's all that matters." James nodded and said, "I will, sir, I promise." I believed them both. The wedding was set for June 23rd at the Riverside Ballroom, a beautiful venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. 214 guests. The guest list was divided equally, half James's family and friends, half mine. I remember choosing the menu, beef Wellington or salmon. The florist kept calling with pictures of centerpiece options. I remember standing in my bedroom at the apartment I still rented, trying on the dress for the final fitting, and my father called. "You nervous?" he asked. No, I said, and I wasn't. I felt sure about James in a way I'd never felt sure about anything before. Are you nervous? Me? No, I'm proud. I'm really proud of you, sweetheart. Those words are important. I want you to remember them. The morning of the wedding, I woke at 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep anymore. I wasn't anxious, just awake, alive. I remember looking out the hotel window and watching the sun come up over the city and thinking that this was the day everything good started. I was in the bridal suite with my maid of honor, Keisha, my best friend since sophomore year of high school. She was helping me with my veil when my father knocked on the door. He wasn't supposed to see me yet, bad luck and all that, but I let him in anyway. He was crying again. He's not a crier, my father. I'd only seen him cry twice before that day. Once when my mother left and once when his mother died. You look beautiful, he said. Thanks, Dad. He pulled me into a hug, and he held on for longer than felt normal. When he pulled away, I noticed his hands were shaking. I love you, he said. I need you to know that. No matter what happens, that's true. I love you. I love you too, Dad. What's wrong? Why are you being so weird? Nothing's wrong, he said. Everything's perfect. But his eyes were saying something different. The reception was perfect. The venue was perfect. The food was perfect. The speeches were charming and funny. James's best man told the story of the time James got drunk at their college graduation and fell into a fountain. Everyone laughed. My best friend Keisha made a speech about how she'd never seen me this happy and how James was one of the few men who actually deserved me. People slow danced. We cut the cake. My father drank 3 glasses of champagne. Then it was time for him to give his speech. My father stood up. He tapped his glass with a fork. The room quieted down. I remember smiling at him, encouraging him. He looked nervous, but I thought it was just normal father-of-the-bride nerves. I want to say something, he began. His voice was loud, louder than it needed to be. About my daughter and about this marriage. Everyone leaned in to listen. Sarah is my only child. She's been my responsibility since her mother abandoned us. I raised her. I paid for her education. I taught her the value of hard work and independence. He paused. He looked at me. His eyes were hard now, not angry exactly, but cold. I've always worried that someone would come along and try to take advantage of her. That someone would want her for the wrong reasons, because Sarah is a successful woman. She makes good money. She has savings. She has a future. I felt my chest tighten. Something was wrong. The energy in the room had shifted. So when Sarah told me she was marrying James, I decided to do what any father would do. I did a background check. I checked his finances. And you know what I found out? He looked directly at James now. Your father's company is in serious trouble. Your personal investments are underwater. You've taken out 3 personal loans in the last 2 years. You're basically broke, James. And now I understand exactly why you wanted to marry my daughter. The room went silent, not the good kind of silent, the kind where everyone is holding their breath, waiting for the next disaster. My daughter is a gold-digger's dream, James. She makes her own money. She has her own prospects, and you knew that when you married her. He sat down. He reached for his glass of champagne and drank it in one long swallow. I remember looking at James. His face was pale. He stood up and walked out of the ballroom without a word. I wanted to follow him, but Keisha grabbed my arm and pulled me into the bathroom instead. In the bathroom, I cried for the first time that day, but not for long, maybe 2 minutes. Then I stopped. Then I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. In the mirror, something had changed. The wedding ended early. People left in uncomfortable waves. My father left before I could even talk to him. I found James in the hotel suite, staring out the window at the city lights. Your father is right, he said, without turning around. About my finances, I should have told you. I meant to tell you, and I kept not telling you, and then we were engaged, and I didn't know how to say it anymore. Why didn't you tell me? My voice sounded strange, detached. Because I was ashamed, and because... He turned to face me. Because I do love you, but my family is struggling. My father made some bad investments. I inherited a company that's bleeding money. I thought if I married someone stable, someone who understood finances, maybe I could figure out how to fix it. He was being honest. That was the worst part. He was being honest, and it didn't matter because the damage was already done. So my father was right. No, not completely. I love you. But yes, part of me married you because I needed someone stable. Part of me married you because I was desperate. I sat down on the bed. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the fact of my marriage sink into my bones. I was married to someone who had married me partly out of desperation. My father had publicly humiliated both of us, and everyone at that wedding would be telling their friends what had happened. "What do we do?" James asked. "I don't know," I said. But that was a lie. Somewhere in my brain, something was already calculating, already planning. The next 3 weeks were a nightmare of a different kind. The story spread through our social circles like a virus. People started treating me differently. My boss asked me, in a very concerned way, if everything was okay. My coworkers suddenly had a lot of conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. People who I thought were friends unfollowed me on Instagram. But the worst part wasn't the social humiliation. The worst part was the legal problem. James's family decided to lawyer up. They were considering suing my father for defamation and emotional distress, but they wanted to do it carefully. They didn't want more publicity. They didn't want to drag the family through a court battle. So they asked if James and I would consider issuing a joint statement saying that my father's comments were factually incorrect and that we were moving forward as a family. I said no. James didn't understand why. "It would make this go away," he said. "We were in our new apartment, the one we'd planned to get together, the place where we were supposed to start our marriage. Instead, it felt like a cage." "It would make you forgive your father," I said. "Isn't that what you want?" "No," I said, "that's not what I want." What I wanted was to destroy him. But I didn't say that, not yet. The real pressure started when my father called me. It was a Tuesday evening. I was at work finishing up a tax return for one of my clients. My phone buzzed, unknown caller. I almost didn't answer. "Hi, honey." His voice was soft, apologetic. "How did you get this number?" "It's the same number you've had for 6 years. I'm your father." "What do you want?" "I want to apologize. I was wrong. I was angry, and I let my anger get the better of me. I shouldn't have said those things at your wedding. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. "I've been going to therapy," he continued. "My therapist says I have abandonment trauma from your mother leaving. He says I projected that onto you and onto James. He says I was scared of losing you, so I acted out in the worst way possible." I was quiet for so long that he asked if I was still there. "I'm here," I said. "Can we talk? Can I take you to lunch or something? I want to make this right." I told him yes. I told him I'd meet him on Friday at Café Allée downtown. I meant it too, but not in the way he thought I meant it. That Friday, I wore a navy dress and minimal makeup. I looked professional and calm. I looked like someone who had processed her emotions and was ready to move forward. My father was already at the cafe when I arrived. He stood up when he saw me and tried to hug me. I let him, but I didn't hug back. We ordered lunch. He got a salad. I got a sandwich. We made small talk about work and the weather and his neighbor's new dog. Then, when the waiter had cleared our plates, he said, "I've been thinking about what I did, and I realize now that I was projecting my own failures onto you. I've never been successful in love, and I think I was angry that you were. I was angry that you found something I couldn't keep." "You're right," I said. He looked relieved. "You were angry," I continued, "but not for the reasons your therapist told you. You were angry because James's family has money and you don't. You were angry because you realized that your daughter married above her station, and that made you feel inadequate." His face changed. "That's not—" "Let me finish," I said. My voice was still calm, still pleasant. "You called me a gold digger at my wedding because you needed everyone to know that you didn't approve, that I was acting beneath myself. You needed to prove that you were still in control of me, even though you're not. Not really. Not anymore. Sarah, I don't. I'm not done. You've been asking for my forgiveness because you feel bad about yourself, not because you've actually done any real work. Your therapist gave you a nice narrative about abandonment trauma, and you're using that as an excuse to avoid the fact that you're just a petty, resentful, controlling man who couldn't handle seeing your daughter happy in a way he approved of. He put his fork down. His hands were shaking again. You still don't understand what you did, I said. You didn't just embarrass me. You didn't just embarrass James. You made a public statement that could have legal consequences. For him, for his family, for me, by extension. I was just being a concerned father. No, I said. You were being cruel, and now you're here asking me to absolve you of that cruelty so you can feel better about yourself. But I'm not going to do that. I stood up. I left $50 on the table for my portion of the meal. I hope your therapist is very good, I said, because you're going to need him. I walked out of that cafe, and I never looked back. That was the moment I fully committed to what I was going to do. Over the next 3 months, I became someone new. I was still me on the surface. I still went to work. I still paid my bills. I still smiled at people in the grocery store. But underneath, I had transformed into something else entirely. Something cold, something focused. I started by collecting evidence. I bought a small digital recorder from an electronics store. I went back through my phone and found the voicemail my father had left me the day after the wedding. He'd called at 3 a.m, drunk, saying he was sorry. I saved it. I called him back and asked him to meet me for coffee. When he agreed, I recorded the entire conversation. In that conversation, he made several damaging statements about my marriage, about James's family finances, and about his own motivations for what he'd said at the wedding. In Oregon, you can record a conversation if one party, in this case me, consents to the recording. My father did not consent, but I did, and that was all the law required. I printed out every social media post that mentioned the wedding, every screenshot of people discussing what had happened, every comment that repeated his accusations. I hired a private investigator, an older woman named Patricia who had worked in cybercrime before she retired from the Portland Police Department. She dug into my father's communications. She got copies of his emails. She found evidence of him discussing the wedding incident with his coworkers, spreading the story further. All of this was legal. All of it was documented. All of it was building a case. I also started documenting my own emotional distress. I went to a therapist, not because I needed one, but because I needed a professional record of how my father's actions had affected me. My therapist, Dr. Linda Vasquez, was brilliant. She understood what I was doing immediately. You're going to sue him, she said in our 3rd session. Eventually, I confirmed. Defamation. That's what I'm leaning toward. He made a false and damaging public statement about me and my marriage. He did it intentionally. He caused me demonstrable harm. My marriage is strained. My professional reputation was affected. People at my work started treating me differently. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. Your father is going to lose a lot of money on legal fees. Yes, I said, but that's not the worst part for him. What is? The worst part is going to be facing me in court and realizing that I was always smarter than he was, that I was planning this the entire time, that he never stood a chance. She made a note in her pad. I don't think she was taking clinical notes. I think she was admiring my strategy. I hired Margaret Chen in her office downtown. Her practice was on the 15th floor of a building with a view of the river. She listened to my recordings. She read through my documentation. She reviewed the messages. She looked at the photos of my wedding invitation and the guest list. This is a solid case, she said finally. I can win this. I know, I said. That's why I hired you. Margaret smiled. You don't have ego about this. That's good. A lot of people come to me and they want to sue their parents and they're still emotionally attached to the outcome. You're not. You're clinical. I've been planning this for 3 months. And you're not going to tell me why, not the real reason. No, I said, I'm not. Okay, then let's talk about strategy. We spent 4 hours in her office that day. Margaret laid out the case framework. She would file a suit alleging defamation per se, meaning the statements were so damaging that they caused harm by their very nature. She would file in Multnomah County Circuit Court. She would request damages for emotional distress, loss of consortium in my marriage, and damage to my professional reputation. What's your damage amount? Margaret asked. $250,000, I said immediately. That's aggressive. Your father doesn't make that kind of money. I know. He'll have to take out a loan or sell assets. That's the point. Margaret leaned back in her chair and regarded me with something like respect. You're going to ruin him financially. Not just financially, I said. I pulled out my phone and showed her the recording I'd made at the cafe. In it, my father made an additional statement about why he'd said what he said at the wedding. It was an admission of malice. It was gold for a defamation case. How did you get this? Margaret asked. He gave it to me willingly, I said. I didn't tell her about the recorder. I didn't need to. She understood. 2 weeks later, Margaret filed the suit. I expected my father to panic. Instead, he called me. I got the papers from your lawyer, he said. His voice was calm, but I could hear the strain underneath. Yes, I said. You're suing me, your own father, for $250,000. I'm suing you for defamation, I said. You made false statements about me in front of 200 people. You caused damage to my reputation. You caused damage to my marriage. You caused me emotional distress. You broke the law. Sarah, I apologized. I told you I was sorry. You apologized so you would feel better, not because you understood what you'd done, and that's why you're being sued now. I can't afford a $250,000 judgment. I don't have that kind of money. I know, I said. You'd really do this to me. You'd really take me to court and try to destroy me financially. Yes, I said, without hesitation. I hung up before he could respond. The next month was preparation. Margaret obtained discovery, which meant my father had to turn over his financial records, his emails, his communications about the wedding. What we found was better than I'd expected. My father had not only discussed the wedding incident with coworkers. He'd written a detailed email to his insurance company's HR department describing what had happened. In that email, he'd suggested that I might not be a good fit for my role as an accountant, because clearly I'd married someone without properly vetting him financially. He'd implied that my professional judgment was compromised by romantic entanglement. This email had been shared with my company through some network of business connections. My boss had seen it. My boss had not acted on it. She was too smart for that, but she'd seen it, and it had influenced how she viewed me. Margaret showed me this email in her office. She slid it across the desk in a plastic sleeve like it was evidence at a crime scene, which it was. This is the nail in the coffin, Margaret said. This shows ongoing malice. This shows he didn't just make a mistake at your wedding. This shows he actively worked to damage your reputation and your career after the fact. I read the email 3 times. In it, my father had called my professional judgment into question. He'd suggested my coworkers couldn't trust me. He'd done it without my knowledge, without my consent, with the intention of harming me. I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no satisfaction even, just a cold confirmation that I'd been right about him all along. I want to increase the damages request, I said, to $375,000. Margaret did that. She filed an amended complaint with the new damages figure and attached the email as evidence. The deposition was scheduled for a Wednesday morning at Margaret's office. My father was required to answer questions under oath while being recorded. I was going to be there, watching from a small room with a video feed. Margaret had wanted me to participate directly, but I declined. I wanted to watch him. I wanted to see his face when he understood the full scope of what he'd done. The night before the deposition, James asked me if I was nervous. No, I said. Do you want to talk about what's going to happen tomorrow? Not really. He nodded. He'd learned over the past few months that I wasn't going to process my emotions with him anymore. I'd learned that our marriage was a transaction, just as my father had suggested. He'd needed financial stability. I needed someone to be married to so that my father's accusation of being a gold digger would sting more. We were both using each other. The only difference was that I'd been honest about it, at least to myself. I hope you get what you want out of this, James said quietly. So do I told him, and I meant it. My father arrived at Margaret's office at 9:55 a.m., 5 minutes before his scheduled deposition. He was wearing a suit that he'd probably owned for 10 years. His shirt was poorly pressed. He looked smaller than he had at the wedding. His lawyer was a man named Robert Sullivan. Sullivan was aggressive in a desperate way. He'd already filed 3 motions to dismiss or reduce the damages. All of them had failed. Margaret was better than he was. We both knew it. The deposition lasted 4 hours. Margaret started with basic questions about the wedding, about his state of mind, about why he'd decided to speak at all. My father's answers were defensive and rambling. He kept trying to explain his motivations instead of just answering the questions. Then Margaret got to the evidence. She pulled out the email he'd sent to the HR department. She put a copy on the table in front of him. "Do you recognize this email?" she asked. "Yes," my father said. "You wrote this approximately 2 weeks after the wedding." I was still processing what had happened. "In this email, you suggest that your daughter's professional judgment is compromised because she married someone without properly vetting him financially. Is that accurate?" I was expressing a concern. "You sent this email to the HR department of your insurance company, a company that works with many other businesses in Portland. Is that correct?" It was an internal email. It was an internal email that violated your employees, your daughter's, right to privacy and to a good reputation. Is that correct? My father's lawyer objected. Margaret overruled the objection by continuing her line of questioning. "You knew when you sent this email that there was a reasonable chance it could reach your daughter's employer, didn't you?" Long pause. "Yes," my father said finally. "And you sent it anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was angry. Because I felt like she needed to understand what she'd done. Because I wanted her to recognize that her life was falling apart." Margaret leaned back in her chair. She pulled out another document. This one was a text message chain between my father and his sister, my Aunt Patricia. "These are text messages you sent your sister between June and August of this year. Is that correct?" "Yes." "In these messages, you describe your daughter as naive and financially illiterate. You say that she married a con man and that her judgment is completely unreliable. Do you remember sending these messages?" "Yes." "And did you know that your sister would share these messages with other members of the family?" "I don't know what she did with them." "But you suspected she might." "Yes," he said quietly. "So you were actively working to damage your daughter's reputation within your extended family, as well as her workplace." I was telling the truth as I saw it. "But the truth as you saw it was based on false assumptions about your daughter's motivations, wasn't it? You assumed she married James for financial reasons, but you didn't actually have any evidence of that, did you? His financial situation speaks for itself. Does it? Or does it simply prove that you had made assumptions about your daughter's character based on your own emotional trauma regarding her independence and her mother's departure?" My father's lawyer objected again. Margaret smiled slightly and let it rest. But the damage was done. In trying to defend himself, my father had confirmed everything Margaret needed. He'd admitted to intentional actions designed to damage my reputation. He'd admitted to using his knowledge of how information travels to spread his allegations. He'd admitted that he'd acted out of emotion and anger rather than any genuine concern. He'd admitted that he was guilty. I watched all of this through a video screen in a side room. I didn't move. I didn't react. I just watched my father get dismantled by a woman who was better at thinking than he was. When it was over, Margaret came into the side room. She looked satisfied. "That was better than I expected," she said. "He cracked," I said. "He did. He admitted to everything we need. The judge will award the damages, probably the full amount, given the evidence of premeditated malice." "When?" "The trial is scheduled for October. We might settle before then, but I'd be surprised. Your father seems like the type who won't believe he's lost until a judge tells him he has." The trial was scheduled for October 18th. But we didn't make it that far. On October 4th, I received an envelope at my office. My name was written on it in my father's handwriting. Inside was a letter. I read it in the bathroom with the door locked. The letter was 3 pages. In it, my father admitted everything. He admitted that he'd been motivated by jealousy and resentment. He admitted that he'd intentionally tried to damage my reputation. He admitted that he'd been wrong, not just about the allegations, but about me as a person. He said he'd realized, through therapy and through this legal process, that I'd never needed him to protect me, that I was stronger than he was, that I always had been. At the end of the letter, he asked me if I would consider settling the lawsuit. Not to save him money. He said he deserved to pay the full damages, but to spare himself the final humiliation of sitting in a courtroom and having his actions described in detail by lawyers and witnesses. He said he was willing to pay the full $375,000. He said he would need to sell his house to do it, and he was willing to do that. He said he'd already begun the process. The last line of the letter was this: "I understand if you refuse. I deserve for you to refuse. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, and I'm sorry. I'm deeply, truly sorry." I put the letter down. I sat on the bathroom floor. I waited to feel something. But I didn't. I felt empty. I called Margaret. "Your father wants to settle," I told her. "Full damages." "How much money are we talking about?" $375,000. "He doesn't have that. He's selling his house." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to accept?" "I don't know." "Do you want to accept?" "I don't know that either." "Then don't," Margaret said. "Go to trial, make him sit in front of a judge and admit what he did. Make it public record, make it permanent." I understood what she was offering me. A more complete victory, one that would follow him for the rest of his life. But something had shifted in me when I read that letter. The satisfaction I'd been waiting for, the moment when I would finally feel vindicated and powerful, wasn't coming. The victory didn't feel like victory anymore. It just felt like a thing I was supposed to want. "I need to think about it," I said. "Take the weekend," Margaret told me. That weekend, I drove to my father's house. I hadn't been there since my mother left, but the driveway looked the same. The garden was overgrown now. He'd never been much of a gardener. He came to the door before I even knocked. He looked like he'd lost weight, like something fundamental had changed in his body. "Hi," he said. "Hi. Do you want to come in?" I followed him inside. The house smelled like it always had, like him, like coffee and old books and the fabric softener he'd used my entire life. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where he'd made me mac and cheese for so many nights, where he'd helped me with my homework, where he'd told me stories and listened to my problems. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began, "when we met for coffee, and I think you were right about most of it, but I think you were wrong about one thing." "What?" I asked. "You think I apologized for me because I felt bad about myself, but that's not true. I apologized because I'd hurt you and I couldn't stand knowing that." I didn't respond. "I was a terrible father," he continued. "I was resentful and controlling, and I let my own failures poison how I treated you. But I loved you. I do love you, and I think part of you knows that." "I do know that," I said. "That's what makes this harder." He nodded. He understood. He'd always understood things about me that I tried to hide. "Are you going to go to trial?" he asked. "I haven't decided yet." "I hope you don't," he said. Not because I'm afraid of what will happen, but because I don't want you to spend any more energy on me. You've already spent so much time on this, on punishing me. I don't want that to be how you remember this part of your life. You don't get to decide that, I said, but my voice was softer now. No, he agreed. I don't, but I'm asking anyway. I settled the lawsuit for the full damages amount. My father sold his house and paid the settlement. He declared bankruptcy and started over in a small apartment. He kept his job at the insurance company, though he moved to a different department to avoid awkwardness. We didn't reconcile exactly. We established a kind of détente. We had lunch once a month. It was strained and formal, but it existed. But that's not really the ending, is it? The real ending happened 6 months after the settlement, at my workplace. I was called into my boss's office. Her name is Catherine, and she's one of the smartest people I know. She has a law degree and an MBA, and she runs a multi-million-dollar accounting firm. Close the door, she said when I came in. I sat down across from her. I'm making you a partner, she said. Effective immediately. You'll manage the firm's 3 largest accounts, you'll have a salary increase to 120, and you'll have equity in the company. I'm doing this because you're an exceptional accountant and an exceptional employee. But I'm also doing this because of what happened with your father. What? I said. That email he sent to HR about you. I heard about it through my network. I heard about the lawsuit. And I realized that your father had tried to undermine you, and you responded by building a legal case against him, not by falling apart. That's the kind of resilience I want in a partner. That's the kind of person who belongs here. I felt something warm spread through my chest. I had also heard, Catherine continued, that you've started a side consulting business where you help women navigate complicated family legal situations, particularly situations involving defamation and reputation damage. That's brilliant work. That's changing people's lives. I nodded. I had done that. Without really planning to, I'd become a resource for women who'd been falsely accused or publicly shamed by family members. I'd learned the law inside and out. I'd learned how to build cases. I'd become good at it. I want to formalize that work, Catherine said. I want the firm to create a practice group focused on reputation law and defamation cases. I want you to run it. I want you to take on clients who can't otherwise afford good legal representation. And I want the firm to fund it. For the first time since this whole thing started, I cried. But these weren't the tears from the night of my wedding. These were different. These were tears of gratification, of recognition, of being seen. Yes, I said, I want to do that. That night, I called my father. Catherine offered me a partnership, I told him. That's wonderful, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. I'm so proud of you. And I'm starting a legal practice group focused on reputation law and defamation cases. We're going to help women who have been publicly attacked by their families. There was a long pause. That's because of what I did to you, he said. Yes. Something good came from that. A lot of good things, I said. I've helped 17 women file lawsuits. We've won 13 of them. The other 4 settled. The women I've helped would still be living with that shame if I hadn't gone through what I went through with you. Do you forgive me? He asked quietly. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm not sure forgiveness works like that. You hurt me. I hurt you back. Now I'm using what I learned from hurting you to help other people. I think that's something. I don't know if it's forgiveness, but I think it's something. I'll take it, he said. I hung up. 1 year after my wedding, I'm sitting in my office on the 21st floor of a building that overlooks the entire Portland skyline. The office belongs to me. The practice group belongs to me. The future belongs to me. I think about the woman I was before that wedding day. I think about how small my dreams were. How I was just trying to buy a condo and build a quiet life. How I thought security meant having a man and a stable job and a father who supposedly loved me. I was stupid. I wasn't innocent. I was just stupid. But my father was right about one thing. He said I was stronger than he was. I didn't believe him when he said it in his letter, but I do now. I'm strong because I learned that love and cruelty can come from the same person. I learned that family isn't a guarantee of safety. I learned that the only person I can completely trust is myself. I'm strong because I learned that if someone tries to destroy you, you have a choice. You can be destroyed, or you can become something harder, something brighter, something that turns their cruelty into your strength. My husband and I are getting divorced. He'll get half the apartment. He'll get some of the money, but he won't get me, and he won't get what comes next. He'll go back to his family and try to fix their business, and I'll go forward and keep building mine. My father calls me once a week now. We talk about work and the weather and small things. We don't talk about what happened at the wedding. We don't need to. It's always there between us, but it's not the thing that defines us anymore. I don't hate my father, but I don't forgive him either. I've just learned to live with what he did and what I did in response. And I've learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't victory. It's becoming the kind of person who doesn't need revenge anymore. Sometimes, the best revenge is just becoming unstoppable. My phone buzzes. It's a text from a new client. She was publicly accused of infidelity by her husband at their workplace. She wants to know if we can help her. I type out a response. Yes, let's talk about how we're going to destroy him. I don't use the word destroy metaphorically. I mean it literally. I mean we're going to take his lies and his cruelty and his narcissism, and we're going to expose it to the law and to the world, and we're going to make sure he never gets to use his voice to hurt anyone again. That's what I do now. That's who I am. And every single time I win for someone else, I'm winning again for myself. I'm taking back what my father tried to take. I'm proving that he was wrong about me. He said I was a gold digger. I became a predator. He said I had poor judgment. I became a strategist. He said I was weak. I became unstoppable. And I did it all quietly. I did it all calmly. I did it all while smiling and being polite and never letting him see the full scope of what I was planning. That's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not shouted from rooftops or declared in courtrooms. Real revenge is quiet. It's strategic. It's something you build methodically over months and months while everyone around you assumes you're just surviving. Real revenge is becoming so successful, so powerful, so completely unstoppable that the person who hurt you realizes they were never in your league at all. And the best part, they have to live with that knowledge forever.